Hello everyone and welcome to a brand new rigging series, Character Rigging for Beginners. In this series of videos, I'll walk you through start to finish on how to create a human IK rig for your characters. Since these videos will target artists who are new to rigging, I'll try to minimize a use of scripting, math nodes, and third-party plugins and just stick to the out-of-shelf tools in Maya. Having said that, the emphasis will be on the workflow and the principles, not individual tools. We'll try to keep everything simple, so steps are super simple to follow, and at the end of it, you'll have a solid IK rig for your own use and for your own character. So, let's dive right in. The first step is to start with the skeleton. Now, I'm not going to introduce individual tools. I'd rather use them throughout the tutorial. I may record separate videos and explain individual rigging tools, but for now, we're just going to assume that you all have basic knowledge of simple rigging tools in Maya. So I have a Sam character here in the scene, and it's very simple. We've got a character, eyes are separate, and the hair is a single geometry. I've already gone ahead and UV mapped the whole thing and textured it, and it's ready to go. So first things first, I want to put everything on a display layer, so I won't select the character by accident since we're going to rig this character. So I'm going to call this geo layer, and I'm going to reference it and save. Anytime you want to turn off the layer, you can easily select the V and toggle the visibility. Also make sure this scene is clean. There's no unused node, there's no extra influence node that you haven't been used, there's no unused shader. So I've already cleaned up the scene and deleted the history of my geometry, and it's ready to go. Now, first step is to build the leg joints. I'm going to shading and make sure X-ray joints is enabled. Also, I make sure that wireframe on shaded is also enabled because I would like to see the lines on my model. And since I'm in perspective view, I will switch to orthographic. I have a tendency to start with orthographic and just I found that it's more accurate to place the joints and look after the skeleton. Now from here, I'm going to skeleton, create joints, option box. I'm going to reset the tool so my attributes matches yours. And I'm going to start with my first joint, which is the root of the thigh. I'm gonna click, then I'll bring the skeleton down to knee, and we're going ahead and create the joint right at the ankle and end the chain right there by pressing enter on the keyboard. Now at any point of time, if you would like to make a change to the position of the joint, you select the joint, you press W to go to move tool and hold down D to reposition the joint. For the most part, mine looks good. That's fantastic. I'm going to go to perspective and move it aside. I better use actually front, gives me a better accurate read, and I think I need to rotate it in y-axis and align it better, but I really don't want to touch any rotational values. When we talk about intermediate or advanced way of rigging, it is absolutely fine to go ahead and change rotation values, but this tutorial is for beginners and we try not to touch that. First we use join orient instead, so I'm holding down control and middle mouse button and just drag ever so slightly. That should be a good position for the rig. Now, if you think the joint size is a bit too small, at any point of time, we can go to display, you can go to animation, and you can change the joint size here. I think 0.9 is a good value, so I'm not going to change it for now. Now I'm going to switch back to my side view, and I'm going to zoom in and switch to wireframe. And I've got the last joint here. What I'm going to do, I'm going to select create joints, but I'm not going to click on the last joint, because as soon as you click, you continue the chain, and that's something that I don't want to do for this example. What I want to do is to select the skeleton, create joints, and just click anywhere in the canvas, bring it to the position roughly, and then continue with my ball roll and end the joint right at the end of the toes outside the geometry and press enter. Now, definitely this joint should be aligned accurately. The problem is it's kind of sharing the same radius, and it's a bit difficult to select. So I'm going to go to channel box, and we've got a radius channel here. I'll reduce this to probably 0.6 or maybe 0.5, so it's easier to differentiate. Now, one thing that I would like to do right off the bat, I would like to put few tools in my shelves. The first one is local rotation axis. So I'm going to go to display. I'm going to go to transform display, local rotation axis. I'm going to hold down Control Shift click and add it to my shelf. I'm going to enable local rotation axis for my ankle joint. Now I'm going to snap this joint to the local rotation axis of my end ankle joint. To do that, I'm going to hold down or press W, hold down V middle mouse button, and just snap it to the position. So these joints are sharing the same pivot now, and it is very important to do that, otherwise you get really wobbly deformation. Now it's time to go ahead and fix the orientation in the side view. So I'm going to select the foot bone. Now, right now, the orientation of my joints is not accurate. So what I'm aiming for at the moment is X to be down the chain, just like if I select on this guy and enable local rotation axis, you can see X is down the chain. So first things first, I'm going to select the end joint and zero out the orientation of the ankle end joint, which has got the bigger radius. And then I'm going to select the foot bone, the inner joint, and I can see that the orientation is in fact actually down the chain. Now later on, when we talk about plugins in intermediate and more advanced topics in rigging, we're going to discuss many plugins that can just do this for us automatically. But for now, every time you want to orient something manually, you can simply select the bone, Shift P to unparent the joint, F to frame, and then you can go ahead and fix the orientation of this bone however you want to. I can just press or punch in a value in here, or hold down Control middle mouse button, drag to left and right to change any of these values that I want. For now, this looks okay, because this in fact shows me that this bone shows down the chain. Now I'm going to select the child, which is the ball roll, and shift select the foot bone and press P to establish the connection again. And right now I have these two as two separate chains, and that's not good. I want to connect them. So I'm going to select the child, shift select the parent, and press the P key. As soon as I do that, it gives me the entire chain completely connected, and I'm just going to select the inner joint and toggle off local rotation axis. That's much better. You just need to make sure that the orientation is right. So if I press E on this joint and rotate it in x-axis, you should see that we are getting the right deformation. I'm going to control Z on that. I have no intention of rotating any joint. So now once we've created at least one chain like that, it's a good idea to go ahead and rename everything to make sure that we have just the right naming convention, and that is super important. The way we do that is I'm going to hold down Shift, click on that joint to reveal every single joint that I have here, and I'm going to just name them one by one. So I will be using the naming convention of GNT for joint underscore L for left and thigh 01. I'm going to copy the name and I'm going to continue down the chain. This one is GNT L shin 01. Next, down to the joint, I'm just going to zoom in and hide the grid. Now I've got two bones here. One is the inner, one is the outer. The outer is the end bone of the foot chain. So I'm going to call this joint underscore end underscore L ankle. Gonna select the name, copy, paste for the next one. It's joint L ankle 01. Next, down the chain, this one is going to be GNT, not end, rather underscore L underscore foot 01. And the end joint is, of course, is joint end L toe 01. Fantastic. Everything is named properly. And we are going to follow that type of naming convention every step of the way. Now it's time to put together our IK handle. I'm going to go to skeleton and I'm going to go all the way down to create IK handle. And I make sure that in current solver rotate plane is selected. Since we may make a mistake by clicking on the wrong joint, I'm going to do it through the outliner. So the first joint I'm going to select is GNT L thigh, and the last joint I'm going to pick is GNT end left ankle. Now if I go to display, go to animation and tear off the menu, you can actually increase the size of each handle so you can actually select it. Gonna select the IK handle, and if I move it, you can see that I managed to lift the foot. That would be the IK handle for the left foot. Great. Let's rename my IK handle as well. I'm just going to call this RP for rotate plane IK underscore L underscore leg 01. Now it's time for me to mirror the joints to the other side because I don't want to go through the manual process of doing all of this again. I can use a nifty trick to mirror everything to the other side. Now with the thigh joint selected, you go to skeleton, mirror joints, the option box. Just going to reset the tool, and all I need to do is search for L and replace it with R. Now the mirror function, we want behavior, and mirror axis needs to be YZ. Just think of an imaginary plane, and that from this side goes to the other side, so it is going to be YZ. And I press mirror. Then if I go through the naming convention, you can see the naming convention stays the same, but every L has been replaced with letter R. Fantastic. I'm going to copy the name from my IK handle and change L to R for the right leg. Just very quickly gonna select it and test. Works just fine. Now it's time to clean up as we go. I don't want to leave anything for the end. I just want to clean up every step of the way that I go through. So I'm going to put IKs into one group, call them IK01. If I go to its channel box, I really don't need to see transformation, rotation, and scale. So I'm going to right click on it, lock and hide selected. I'm going to do the same thing with the skeleton. Select both chains, Control G to create a skeleton. I'm going to call this skeleton 01. And do the same thing. I'm going to select translate, rotate, and scale, and right click, lock and hide selected. So every time we create a skeleton, that goes into a skeleton folder, and every time we add an IK handle, that goes into IK01. Everything is nice and clean. Now it's time to add joints for the torso and the head. Now what I want at this point is to create that root joint right at the pelvis area. But one thing that is a common mistake is artists try to just eyeball the root joint, but the problem is with this slight, very minor miscalculation, the joint becomes quite wobbly. So I'm going to show you a really neat trick on how to place that joint for the root right at the center of the pelvis. To do that, we need to create a locator. So let's go to create locator, and if you think it's a bit difficult to see from local scale, you can always go ahead and increase its size. I'm going to increase this to something like 2. Now select the 2 thigh chains and shift select the locator last and go to constraint point. Make sure to reset the settings and press add. Now with maintain offset off, that locator snaps right in the middle of these 2 bones. Now we know exactly where to snap our root bone. Very neat. I'm just going to expand the locator and get rid of that point constraint. It served its purpose. We don't need it anymore. Now we're going to duplicate this locator and bring it up to the area where the chest should end and neck should start. So I'm going to press Control D on the locator and move it in X-axis. And I try to find this neckline here. So that gives me a good understanding on where the spine starts and where the whole chain upward ends, so we can start with the neck bone. Fantastic. I'm gonna go and select the skeleton and turn off its visibility for now. And I'm gonna switch back to orthographic. You can even go ahead and turn off the geometry if you want. So it leaves you with just these 2. Now with these 2, I'm gonna go to skeleton, create, and hold down V to snap to one of the locator, and click again with V held down and press enter, and there I have my spine chain. Obviously it's just one bone and we need to segment it, but we know for a fact that the location of each bone is accurate. Now it's time to use insert join tool to segment the spine chain. I'm going to go to select skeleton and go insert join, and the way you use this tool, you just click and drag. So click and drag, that would be your back joint. Again, click and drag, that would be your chest joint. Going to expand in the outliner, and I'm going to name them here. So JNT root 01, there's no left and right, of course. JNT back 0, 1. And JNT chest 0, 1. Going to bring back the skeleton, and I'm going to bring back the character as well. And again, there are different rigs, different methods. Some rigs have more than three bones for the spine, but remember, we try to keep things simple for now. So that's that. Let's go ahead actually and continue the chain and create the neck and the head. So I'm going to click here to create my head bone. Take care of the head bone, and I'm just going to connect these two. That's going to be the neck bone. So this is the child. Shift select the parent and press the P key, and there I have it. It would be a good idea for me to just slide back the neck bone a little. So I'm going to hold down D with the move tool selected, move that back a little. It's always a good idea to have the joint at the center of the geometry if you can. Just going to press Control A and zero out the orientation of my end bone. Would be a good time to go ahead and continue with my naming convention. So this is going to be JNT underscore neck 0, 1. The other one is going to be JNT head 0, 1. And of course the end joint is JNT end head 0, 1. Now I'm going to switch back to front, and I don't need these two locators. I'm just going to select them, press delete to clean up the scene. Now it's time to create the pelvis bone. We do have the root bone that we want, but let's create the pelvis bone, and later on we parent the pelvis bone to the root bone. So I'm going to go to side view, and I'm going to hide skeleton again just to have access to the root bone only. That's our root bone. And I'm going to hide IK handles as well. I don't want to select anything by accident. And I'm going to go and select the skeleton and create join. I'm not going to click on the join. I'm going to click away and move here and just eyeball it. Click one more time to bring this joint down. Press enter. Of course, now we need to go back and fix its pivot. So I'm going to go to perspective. I'm going to zoom in. Probably we need to use the trick that we used for the ankle. So I'm going to select the root bone, enable rotation axis, and I'm going to select the new joint, the pelvis bone that we created, and hold down V middle mouse and just snap it to the position. So these two share the same pivot. It is really important to do that. If you have a minor offset, then the character is going to wobble. I'm just going to check the end joint as well, make sure it's outside the geometry, and of course, as usual, I'm going to just zero out its orientation so it is down the chain. Is the pelvis down the chain or not? Let's have a look. So if I select the pelvis and have a look, it is actually looking up. The reason that it's this one is okay because this chain is going up. So basically down the chain is up for this chain. So that one is an exception and we're fine with it. But for the most part, for the arms, for the legs, X should be pointing down the chain. So just be mindful of that and constantly check that. Let's rename these two. I'm gonna rename this one to JNT underscore pelvis 01, and the end joint, of course, is JNT end pelvis 01. Let's make the connections. Let's connect the pelvis to the root. So I'm going to select the pelvis, which is the child, shift select the root, which is the parent, and press P. Now pelvis is part of the root now. Let's do the same thing for the thighs. I'm going to bring back the skeleton, and let's do that as well with two thigh bones selected, because these are going to be the child of the main root bone. Shift select the joint for the pelvis. Make sure not to select the root, but the pelvis, and press P. Okay, let's bring back the character, and we successfully managed to create skeleton for our lower body. Now let's create the arm joints. Now, thinking about the preferred angle of this chain, it might be a good idea to start from the top view so we can add a little bit of bend around the elbow. So let's go to orthographic, top, and going to zoom in, and I'm going to just hide the hair and switch back to wireframe. And might be a good idea to go to skeleton and turn off its visibility to off. I'm going to put these joints into skeleton and we deal with it later. So we have just a clean geometry to work with. So for that, instead of just drawing the chain, I'm going to make use of this snapping tool here, snap to the center of geometry button, just to make sure that I can just create my chain in the middle of the geometry. To do that, I need to make sure that the display layer is not frozen. I'm going to enable this snapping tool here and go to skeleton, create joints. And I want to start with around the area that the arm folds down. So that should be around this area. Continue and create the elbow joint and wrist, press enter to create the chain. Now, because of that snapping tool, if I go to front, we can see that the joint in fact has been successfully created, and it's the middle of the joint. It's not sitting right on the ground plane. I might actually go ahead and press D, hold down D and press W and bring this joint just in a little where the arm folds. Might bring this up the whole thing and select this joint, hold down V and bring this one up a little. Let's rename them really quick. So the first one is going to be JNT L shoulder 01. Going to copy the name, go to the next one. It's going to be JNTL forearm 01, or you can call this elbow. And for the last one is going to be JNT underscore end underscore L wrist 01. Now next is to create a clavicle joint. Now via the front view, try to kind of trace back the line of the neck and go down. That would be around the place where you just placed the clavicle joint. So with the joint create tool selected, I'm gonna click once and click twice and press enter. Let's rename them real quick. First one is going to be GNT L clavicle 01. And I'm going to copy and paste JNT and clavicle L clavicle 01. Now, right off the bat, you may have noticed that the position of the pivot for these two are not identical. I'm just going to freeze the geometry so I won't select it by accident. So again, the trick that we always use, enable local rotation axis for the shoulder, select the end clavicle, hold down V middle mouse and snap it to the position. So these two should share the same pivot. Now select the child, which is the shoulder bone or arm bone, shift select the clavicle, which is the parent, and press P. So these two are connected. As for the clavicle joint, select the child, which is the clavicle, shift select the chest bone and press P. Now everything is nicely connected. All right, we're almost there. Let's create the fingers. I'm just going to use that snapping tool again to create fingers. because I found it's actually quite helpful, as this tool just targets the middle of the geometry, which is really convenient. So I'm just gonna unfreeze the geometry. I'm gonna switch back to top view and start with these fingers here. So with the center to geometry snapping tool selected, I'm going to create 4 joints for each knuckle. So 1, 2, 3, and 4. Now you may want to go back and check them, of course, but for now, let's just create them from the top view. 1, 2, 3, and 4. Now I'm going to switch back to perspective. I need to spend more time on the thumb, obviously. The orientation of the thumb needs to be correct. I'm just going to draw the joints to begin with, and then after that I'm just going to go ahead and fix the orientation. So 1, 2, 3, and 4 right at the end. Now one thing you should be mindful of is the bend should happen in rotate Z. So if you're selecting rotate Z and you're bending it sideways, then you definitely need to go back and reorient everything. Now I'm going to spend a little bit of time and bring each bone to position. I'm gonna take off the snap and hold down D and move each bone to the position, and this may take a while. I'm just gonna either pause the video or increase the playback speed and do the cleanup for those. Also, I'm going to select each end bone and select its orientation and freeze the orientation for each end bone. All right, it's done. I've gone ahead and made sure they're right at the center. And if I go to local rotation axis, you can see X is down the chain and things are working beautifully. So that's all done. Also, I've gone ahead and renamed them as well. The way I renamed them, just to show you really quickly, and this is something that you guys can do. I started with JNT, L thumb, A, the first knuckle, and then B, C, and D with the extension of end. Same thing with index, JNT, L, index, A01, B01, C01, and D01 with the end. JNTL middle, A, B, C, and D, and then JNTL ring, A, B, C, and D, and of course pinky, L pinky, A01, B01, C01, and JNT and L pinky, and this one is going to be of course D01. So please go ahead and rename the joints, spend the time and make sure everything is clean. Now once that's done, then you select all 5, so pinky, ring, and then middle and index, followed by thumb, and select the parent, which is the wrist bone, last, and press P key to parent them, and all of a sudden everything goes to the joint root in the skeleton folder. Everything is nice and clean. Good. Actually, I noticed that the head bone is way too high. Just gonna lower it down a little. Now it's time to plug the IK handle, mirror our chain to the other side, and we're pretty much done. So I'm gonna zoom in, go to skeleton, and create IK handle. I want to plug the IK handle to the shoulder bone. So if I select this, this is the shoulder bone, and then the other one is the end clavicle joint, and I don't want to have the IK handle on that. I want to have it on the shoulder bone. So I'm gonna select JNT shoulder. I'm gonna click on it, and if you have difficulty clicking on that, you can always use the outliner, and I'm gonna select the wrist, and IK handle is created. I'm gonna call this RP IK left arm 01. I'm going to select my clavicle. I think I still have local rotation axis on it. Okay, good. So I'm going to select the clavicle, go to skeleton, and mirror the joints with the same structure, replacing L with R, behavior, and YZ to the other side. Just going to check really quick to make sure it's done a good job. Yes, so all the L's are now R. Now, mirror joint never bring the IK handle, so I have to create the IK handle for the right hand side as well. So create the IK handle, select the right shoulder bone, and end it at the right wrist bone. RP IK R arm 01. Now I'm going to select both IK handles and place them into IK folder, pressing P. Alright, the only thing that is left to do is to set up the skeleton for the eyes. I'm going to zoom in, select the character, press H on it. I might as well go ahead and hide the right eye. I'm going to go to the side view, just like what we did for the ankle and the shoulder. We want to target the center of the geometry, create our eye bone, and end it outside the geometry. So I'm going to go and press 4 to go to wireframe, enable local rotation axis, and go to skeleton, create joints. I'm going to create the joint outside the geometry first. Let's reduce its radius to something like 0.2, so it's easier to select. W to select the move tool, hold down V and snap it to the center of the eye. I'm going to end the joint outside the geometry. I'm going to select the eye geometry, turn off its local rotation axis, and let's rename the eye joint JNT L I01, and for the end eye joint it's going to be JNT end LI01. Alright, great. Let's select the eye bone, shift select the parent, which is the head bone, and press P. And with the eye bone selected, let's mirror it across. I'm just going to go to skeleton, mirror joints. Time to bring back our right eye, and it's indeed snapping right at the center of the eye. Great. Let's go ahead and actually skin the eye geometry to the eye bone, so we don't need to deal with it in the next lesson. So we select the eye geometry, shift select the eye bone, or the other way around, doesn't matter really. Go to bind skin, and the only attribute I change is bind to selected joints, and go bind skin. So if I select the eye joint, you can see it just, the eye geometry follows the eye joint. I'm going to do the same thing for the other eye. Select the geometry, shift select the eye bone. I'm going to go to skin and bind skin. Now let's rotate. You can see the eye follows the bone. Let's do the same thing for the hair and skin it to the head bone. So select the hair geometry, shift select the head bone, and we're going to go to bind skin. Now if I were to select the head bone, both eyes and the hair geometry should follow. Good. All right, that is pretty much it. We successfully finished the skeleton for the entire character, and we're ready for the next lesson where we bind the skeleton to the geometry and get it ready for control setups. Thank you very much for tuning in, and see you in the next lesson.